Late at night on the beach, a huge group of college students is having a wild party. Mitch reminds everyone to put their phones in a bag so nobody can take incriminating pictures or videos that could get them in trouble. Suddenly, Vance and Gilbert bring a ball made of a goo that they found in the sea. They want to make a bigger fire to burn it, but they get distracted when insults are thrown and an argument ensues. The ball is forgotten, and the crowd keeps having fun for the rest of the night. The next morning, Kaylee wakes up next to Mitch in the lifeguard stand, and awkwardness takes over their interaction as they remember last night. While 4 other friends wake up in a car, Marcia awakens on a table and immediately throws up. Kaylee looks around and notices lots of abandoned objects on the sand but no more people, which is strange. There's also a bird stuck on the ground, and Kaylee is shocked to see it sink into the sand. When Marcia begins moving, Kaylee tries to tell her not to do it, but it's too late. Her feet are stuck, and she can't pull them out no matter how much she tries. When her hands touch the sand, they get stuck too. At first, the group in the car thinks she's pranking them, but her screaming and tears prove she truly is afraid. Vance wants to help her and ignores the others when they try to stop him. He jumps out of the car and only takes a couple of steps before he falls and gets stuck too. When Vance starts yelling in pain, Mitch and Jonah want to help him, but the girls stop them. As Vance begins to sink into the sand, Jonah tries starting the car, but it won't work. Mitch throws a buoy tied to a rope, but it doesn't fall close enough. By now, Vance has lost half his face, and when he tries to raise his head, very thin strands pull him back down. In just a few minutes, both he and Marcia disappear into the sand. Afterward, the group discusses what to do. They can't call 911 because their phones are in the trunk, and the car battery is dead, so Jonah still can't make it start. Kaylee puts her hand near the sand without touching it, and everyone is shocked to see some mysterious strands coming out. At that moment, Gilbert wakes up. It turns out he's been stuck in a trash can with a naughty drawing on his face because of a party prank. He starts insulting his friends for leaving him there and tries to get out, ignoring the warnings the others are yelling. It isn't until they mention 2 people are dead that Gilbert stops moving. He admits his body is sore from being stuck there, so Mitch reminds him that in a few hours the tide will push him towards them. Then Kaylee drags Mitch inside the lifeguard stand. Jonah watches them with jealousy, and Chanda reminds him he needs to let go. While the mysterious strands try reaching for the car tires, Kaylee and Mitch find some alcohol in the cooler and start drinking. Hours pass, but nobody shows up. The sun is getting strong, and the people in the car try to cover themselves with a towel. Kaylee finally gets brave enough to ask Mitch what they did last night, and Mitch assures her they only talked. Mitch finds some sunscreen in the lifeguard stand, and Kaylee throws it at her friends in the car. As they discuss last night's events, they realize the rest of the partygoers didn't leave, they were eaten by the sand. Everyone cries except for Gilbert, who starts freaking out because the heat is burning his skin. Jonah tosses him the sunscreen, which calms him down for now. At that moment, Kaylee notices the goo ball, all dried up and broken in 2. Ronnie realizes it looks like it hatched, which means it's not a ball, it's an egg, and the monster that came out of it is the thing in the sand eating people. Since it was only born last night, Kaylee deduces it isn't very big yet. She gets a sausage from the cooler and throws it on the sand. Now everyone can see how the strands drag it underground. They throw a few more sausages because they want to see how far the monster reaches, but the strands keep coming out. A bird comes down to eat one of the sausages, only for the strands to catch it and quickly kill it. They throw the last sausage in another direction, and the monster doesn't eat it, so that's the safe zone. It's not very far, but still enough to make it dangerous to reach it. The group begins arguing again, and Ronnie points out they haven't seen a single car or person pass by in hours, so it can't be this simple. Refusing to give up, Jonah grabs 2 surfboards from the back of the car and throws them on the sand. The monster doesn't react, so he jumps on them safely. Now he can alternate the boards to move without danger. When Kaylee reminds him not to put his fingers too close to the sand, Jonah stops moving and announces they need to talk. He calls out everyone who cheated last night, but his friends think this should be a talk for later, their priority should be escaping. Jonah keeps moving, and when he reaches a bench, the surfboard slips, and he almost falls, but he grabs onto the bench at the last second. The others notice that the monster strands are moving the boards back and tell Jonah to come back, but he insists he can still save himself. Suddenly, the strands appear under Jonah and touch his stomach, so he makes a jump to finally reach the top of the table. The strands left bleeding wounds on his skin, and Jonah starts to feel dizzy, so he lays down while hearing a pitching sound in his ears instead of his friends' worried voices. After a few seconds of resting, Jonah snaps out of it and complains about the pain, explaining it feels like 1,000 jellyfish. Since the wounds aren't very deep, Ronnie concludes the strands are poisonous. Jonah takes a deep breath and forces himself to move since there's a bag on the bench. He finds some food and accidentally drops a banana, which doesn't sink. When he picks it up, he notices the strands and lowers the banana again, but the monster only comes out in the sand, not on the bonfire spot. Then he jumps off the bench to land on the same spot, and nothing happens, which confirms his theory, the monster hates fire. To celebrate, Jonah eats the banana, only to watch in horror as his stomach wounds begin expelling pus. Kaylee calms him down with gentle but firm words, telling him to get back on the table and check the bag again. He finds some drinks and begins tossing them at his friends, but when he's tossing the last can, the bench cracks, and he slips. His wounds drip more pus before they start popping and bleeding, causing him to scream in pain. With tons of effort, Jonah keeps moving and manages to get back on the table. At the same time, the surfboards are moving on their own, which means the monster is taking away any means they may use to move. Then the strands appear under the car to attach themselves to the tires, trying to move them. Gilbert asks about the phones, and Ronnie begins pulling at the back seats to reach the trunk, but they won't come off. She announces she'll try standing on the bumper to open it instead, but the metal is hot, so she must cover the trunk with the towel. Before moving, Ronnie tells Chanda that she wrote a letter for her mom in her notebook and asks her to deliver it if something happens to her. By holding Chanda's hands for security, Ronnie crawls on the trunk and lowers her body to stand on the bumper. Meanwhile, Kaylee checks and starts opening the trunk, only for the lid to slip down. Thankfully, she holds on and doesn't fall. She tries again, and the lid hits her legs, causing her to slip and land on top of the trunk, closing it again. Kaylee points out that the trunk is too wide, so she'll have to lean back. Chanda and Ronnie roll up the towel to use it as a rope, but it's still not long enough for Ronnie to lean back and open the trunk at the same time. Mitch and Kaylee remember that there's a rescue hook in the lifeguard stand and pass it to Ronnie, who has trouble moving because the car shakes when the monster pierces the tires. Very carefully, Ronnie finally manages to open the trunk. But before she can reach for the phones, another car appears on the beach and honks so loudly that it startles her. Ronnie slips, and the trunk closes, catching her fingers. While she screams in pain, the others start yelling and waving their arms to get the new person's attention. The car stops near the table, and Officer Alex of the beach patrol lowers his window to tell them the beach is closed. The friends explain what happened, but Alex thinks they drank too much and doesn't believe them. Ignoring their warnings, he gets out of the car, but nothing happens. Alex checks on both Jonah and Gilbert, walking around the beach without issues. It turns out the strands try to grab his feet but can't get through his boots. He mocks Gilbert for his size and the drawing on his face before trying to pull him out to no avail. Then Alex checks on Ronnie, but he can't get her fingers out either. He keeps insulting everyone and implying they consumed something illegal, so Kaylee yells at him for being useless. Alex goes to the lifeguard stand and begins arguing with Kaylee and Mitch, still not believing their story and threatening to use force if they don't come down. Since the duo refuses, he reaches for his pepper spray and accidentally drops his car keys. As soon as he reaches down to grab them, his hand gets stuck. Kaylee tells him to use the pepper spray, and when Alex sprays the strands, they disappear underground and let go. Alex screams in pain when he discovers his arm has already been eaten and falls on the sand because the monster has started to pull him down. Using the ramp on the stand, Ronnie gets close enough to grab the pepper spray and ignores Alex's cries for help, letting him sink to his death. After seeing Alex's boots, Mitch puts on his flip-flops and asks Chanda for her towels, planning to use them to cover his feet. He catches the first one with no issue, but when he reaches for the second, the railing breaks and he falls on the sand. The monster strands immediately reach for him and grab every inch of body they can reach, so the others have to watch as Mitch slowly bleeds to death and his body sinks into the sand. The strands even disintegrate his shirt and come out through his eyes and mouth. Once the body is gone, the blood marks the spot where he died. Afterward, Kaylee notices that the monster is moving the broken railing and tells Chanda to grab it. Kaylee breaks more of the railing and tosses it at Chanda too with the towel. Then she decides to risk it and jumps off the stand, luckily landing on the car. Suddenly, Kaylee punches Chanda for getting naughty with her boyfriend, and the girls decide they're even now. Jonah apologizes to Kaylee for what he did, and they say, "I love you," to each other. Gilbert uses his last strength to turn around in the trash can to communicate better with his friends, and the strands keep reaching out for the dripping blood. Kaylee and Chanda pull Ronnie's body until they manage to get her hand out, then they bandage it with the towel. Then they put the railing pieces on the sand to make a bridge, and Chanda walks on it while explaining she actually did nothing with Jonah last night. After Chanda makes it safely to the table, Kaylee crosses too to reach her boyfriend. Ronnie comes next but gets distracted when she notices blood dripping from the towel. As Ronnie loses balance and falls, Kaylee begins spreading pepper spray to buy them some time. It appears Ronnie is fine, and Kaylee grabs her arm. However, the monster strands reach Ronnie's other arm and bring her down to make her sink. Everyone cries, unaware that the strands are slowly going up Gilbert's trash can. Chanda decides to try Mitch's plan by covering her feet with the towels. She runs as fast as she can and manages to get on top of Alex's car. Suddenly, Gilbert feels the can moving and panics, but it only lasts a few seconds. Right after he announces it's over, he spits blood as big tentacles come out of the can to wrap around his body. They immediately bring him down, only leaving a trail of blood behind. Then the monster shakes Alex's car, causing Chanda to fall on the hood and hit her head, which knocks her out. Several hours pass, and night falls. Chanda finally wakes up and discovers there's a raft on top of the car. She tosses it on the sand to reach the table, and now she can help Kaylee bring Jonah into the car. At that moment, the ground starts shaking, and Kaylee falls back onto the raft. When she is about to return to the vehicle, a glowing tentacle comes out in front of her and tries to attack, but since she dodges it, it only closes the car door before disappearing. Then Kaylee climbs on top of the car and grabs a gas can, only for the tentacle to come out again and destroy it, spreading gas all over itself. Kaylee grabs a second can and empties it on the sand before taking some matches from her pocket. When the tentacle tries to attack her again, Kaylee lights the matches and throws them at it, so the entire tentacle catches on fire. As the creature squirms and screeches, Chanda opens the door so Kaylee can get in the car too. The monster tries opening the door, but the girls pull it back to keep it closed. It also tries hitting the car with its now bigger strands to no avail, so it decides to disappear. The girls take a moment to regain their breath and realize Jonah is dead, so they break down in tears. The next morning, a surfer finds the car and knocks on the window to wake the girls up. They come out and walk on the sand without issues, meaning the monster is gone. While Kaylee and Chanda start making their way home, the creature is swimming in the sea to try to reach a new beach with fresh victims.